This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. A quick reminder for those of you that have not yet purchased the newest edition of Trend Following, the 5th edition, expanded by nearly twice the content of any prior edition, essentially rewritten from the ground up. The hardcover edition of this new 2017 book, man, this is one of those things you put on your library shelf and it stays there. It doesn't get tossed out like so many books get tossed out at the end of every year. And for those of you that are audiobook connoisseurs, the 5th edition of Trend Following has a 34-hour audiobook version. 34 hours. I mean, seriously, that's freaking nuts. But it's awesome too. So please go out and support the cause. And if you find it in your heart to write a review on Amazon, that will also help to promulgate the message. So please, take a look at the hardcover of the new edition Trend Following, or take a look at the audiobook version. And let me see you go write something on Amazon.com. Now, of course, I would like to see you write something nice. But if you want to write something crazy, you can write something crazy. I had some guy recently give it a 2-star review. He compared the book to vegetable gardening. I have no earthly idea what he was talking about. He has no idea what he's talking about. But there's this fantastic negative review that compares Trend Following to vegetable gardening. I tell you what, it takes all kinds. And I smile to myself that if I can trigger somebody to get so hostile about the subject of trend following that they start making a crazy analogy to vegetable gardening, I've won. I just love it. I love it. Now, on to my guest today. My guest today is Moritz Czubatinski. Him and his partner, Rolf, a few years back, launched Tradeciety. These guys specialize in helping traders to get going. From software to Forex education, these guys have spent a lot of time building a community. And so far, that community has blessed what they're doing. And they've had great success. Let me jump right in with my guest, Moritz from Tradeciety. Take me back in time some and give me, that first experience where you first thought of trading. I might have to go back before that at some point in this conversation, but I want to know for you that first experience, was it the kind of the Warren Buffett thing, the CNBC thing, the Bloomberg, the value? What was it that the very first thing that came across your plate about trading?
Well, there was actually a friend, because I was playing poker professionally, and a friend of mine, he wanted to look into more regulated industries, because where we could apply our skill set, because poker is so unregulated, the sites are going broke. You don't know where to pay your taxes and so on. So that guy, he was checking out different income sources, and then he said, "Yo, I got this thing here, Forex." So what the hell is that? Say, "Oh, that's you can make money from the exchange rate of currencies." It's like, no way. So I checked it out, and that's how it started in 2011 or 2010.
Now, did you have any particular school training, econ, finance, or you just or is it just kind of literally this friend turned you on to the idea that this could happen, and then you went down that path?
I had zero education in finance. I studied philosophy, actually.
Yeah.
Educational psychology. What I thought, what was very appealing to me about trading was that because in poker, when you move up the levels, then the risk increases and the skill level of the enemies or your villains increases as well. But in trading, no matter how big you trade, at that time I thought it doesn't matter because the game always stays the same. That was very appealing to me. I thought I would give it a longer look and decided to make the switch.
Yeah, I guess if we thought of the distribution of the particular players on the field of trading, that distribution is going to look, you're going to have your Jim Simons of the world, your David Hardings of the world. You're going to have those big guys are always going to be there, but you're always going to have the brand new folks that are coming in. Whereas, I guess your point being is you move up the ladder in poker, all of a sudden you're then sitting across from, the whole skill level changes. The game's always changing.
Yes, exactly. It's always changing all the time. But the markets themselves are also changing. Like I think I had to adapt my strategy 4 or 5 times in the last few years, especially for day trading.
People are going to smile when they know. I don't know if you're my first very short-term trader on the podcast, and I've always been careful about how I've described short-term trading from my perspective. But I've always been careful in the sense that even in my books, I will say, look, it's not impossible to be a short-term trader. I've always, kind of given shout out to the really big names out there, like the Jim Simons and the Toby Crabels. I say it's not impossible. And I think then also the issue becomes too is time frame. And I'm nowhere in this conversation today am I going to purport to be an expert in very short-term trading. But I think when you start to look at stuff like high-frequency trading, I have a feeling in our conversation today, you're not going to be pointing that way because that becomes, that's like light speed type stuff. So I think the issue here really is choosing a time frame that's viable for a human being, right? Let you explain it though. So why did you decide to stay short term?
That also has to do with poker, actually. When you play poker, you can play up to 24 tables at the same time, and you get a lot of action in. So my
You mean online, you mean?
Yeah, online, exactly. So my mindset at that time was the more trades I get in, the faster I can ride out my edge or variance, and the faster I can make money. That was my mindset at the time. I just look at 25 different currency pairs on the lower time frames and have like 20 screens in front of me. And that's how I would make money. Then, of course, after some time, I realized I had to drill down a little bit deeper, and I focused on one currency pair first, but still on the lower time frames, 1 minute and 5 minute charts. Then I gradually added other charts as well. So right now I'm trading 8 to 10 charts every day. I stuck to it because I'm used to it. I love the action. I just sit in front of my screen and I'm in the zone for 6 to 8 hours every day, and just I'm drawing things on my charts all day long. That's what I do, and watch TV in the background.
Speak to that though, the loving the action, because let's get back to in the beginning of this conversation. I was kind of talking about technique. You said your friend introduced you to the idea of FX, and you've chosen this time frame that's basically day trading. Speak to me, though, about technique. Speak to me about technique. What techniques have you been drawn to? Because I know one of the things we're going to have in common is price action. Is that obviously you're getting in the idea that you could trade. I mean, somebody could very easily make this argument about the longer time frames. Like in my world, they could say, well, hey, hold on, Mike. You could do trend following. Well, this guy over here can make a big macro call, and that could be better or something. That could be his argument. But on the short term, there's no way fundamentals play a role in any way, shape, or form. I mean, how could you make decisions off fundamentals in short term trading?
Usually what I do in my strategy, or what I also tell when I'm mentoring other people, is to watch the economic calendar on certain FX Street, for example. Then you simply analyze the market before that news hits, and then you watch the reaction. And when the technicals line up with the fundamental reaction, then you get in. If not, then it's probably already priced in, or people knew the numbers before they were out, and there is not the reaction we want to see, then we simply don't trade. So I make a plan. If that news event comes in at this and that size, and then the market does this and that, then I will do this and that. So I always have a plan before something happens, because I don't want to get caught off guard Like if the market does something, a move, and I don't know where the move is coming from, before I do anything, I have to find out where that move is coming from.
What you're describing to me, though, sounds price action driven. Like, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying, look, I know the economic dates. I have to know those for my particular strategy, but it's not, you're not forcing the market. It has to give you something.
Yes, absolutely. No, I'm not that big of a trader that I can force the market, and probably never will be. But yeah, I use price structure basically. By the way, I also trade longer term, and that's how I got my attention was drawn to technical patterns like classic wedges and rectangles and all that stuff. And that's on the basis of that I basically developed my day trading strategy, which in a very basic form is I watch for a drive and a consolidation, and then I get in on the second drive out of that consolidation. I'm basically a pullback trend trader.
Let me drill into expectancy to the extent you will talk about it and your percent winning, losing trades. So for example, with your style of trading, and again, I'm asking these questions more as a curious type person, kind of contrasting with my world, right? What percentage, when you've got your particular strategy, and again, this is on the short-term time frame, you've got your economic date lined up, the setup is as you expect, the market takes off. What are you looking at in terms of winners, in terms of your percent winners?
I used to go for at least 1-to-1 risk reward. Then I upped that to 2-to-1, and actually now I'm up to 3-to-1 because simply the 1-to-1 was merely a break even because my win rate is around hovering between 40 and 50%. I eliminated most of my variance and most of my setups by only going for the 3-to-1 risk reward ratio setups. And for those, my win rate is around 40 to 50%. It's between those two numbers for every 100 trade batch I analyze.
I'm sure that will cause some people in my audience that perhaps are diehard long-term trend followers to at least pause and say, hey, hold on. Okay, he hasn't just told me that his winning trade percent is 95%. He just said 40 to 50%, which is going to cause, I mean, even me, it's going to cause me to say, okay, I'm even by the end of this conversation, I won't know all the details behind what you do. But I think the fact that you're being honest enough to say, hey, look, I'm probably, when I take an entry, I'm probably less than a coin flip accurate. But over time, you're still making money.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a tricky thing to first start explaining to people. How do you get that across to people? Because most people, and even in my world too, most people hear, the idea, and look, you and I could turn on Bloomberg or CNBC today, and probably at late at night, there's some guy touting 95% win rates. He doesn't tell you that the 5% are going to lose all your money, but why don't you explain to me, because you do some teaching now too, why don't you explain to me when you get the new person in front of you and they've been seduced by the idea of this high winning percentage, how do you start to break them down to get them to understand, first principles, the idea that you could be winning 40 to 50% and still make money?
We have something in Edgewonk, which is a simulator, and I show that to everyone. What you can do in that thing is basically you play around with win rates versus risk-reward ratios, and then you can very quickly see that you don't need exorbitant win rates. It's simply, I think, the matter is that people need to see it black and white, playing out in front of their eyes. What that simulator does, you can also do it in MATLAB or Excel if you have a little bit of knowledge, is simply to extrapolate those numbers, 500 trades into the future, and then gives you an expectation corridor, basically where you are going to end up. And then when people see they only need a 60% win rate and a 1.2 risk-reward ratio, for example, to make money, that's when they look at me like I'm a witch or something like that. But they really have to see it black and white. That's the huge difference. If you only tell them you only need to be right 40% of the time, you can still make money. Or if I tell them first, when you look at the chart doesn't predict anything. It only shows you trade opportunities with a positive risk-reward ratio. Then they look at me like I'm crazy. first they have to see that black and white, and I think that makes a huge difference.
For the skeptics in the audience that are pondering our conversation so far, I want to toss something out, though. I was thinking about this before our call today. So one of the most famous trend following traders, in fact, the only one that I recall, but one of the absolute grandfathers, most successful for teaching a bunch of people how to trade. But Richard Dennis started in the pits. While as a trend following trader from my world, diversification will be critical because you're going to have far less trades on that time frame, that longer time frame. So you need to have the diversification across markets. But when Dennis started out, whether it was in the soybean pit or whatever in particular pit it was, I think it was the bean pit. But when he started out, he was on these short-term time frames, basically in the pit for 4 to 6 hours each day, trading one particular market. In many ways, I think what you're describing, from your perspective, is kind of the 2017 take on what Richard Dennis was doing in the 70s on one market in the pit. You're kind of doing it on one market online.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah. Give me some thought process, though, to the currencies. There's so much hype about currencies. And, I get the question all the time, do currencies work in trend following? And, gosh, it's probably been, more money's been pulled from the currency markets in trend following than just about any other market. But speak to currencies and why you have stayed there versus going outside to other markets.
First few years I stayed in currencies. Later I ventured into futures as well. Right now also in stocks.
Are you just trading currency futures or other futures markets?
Mini Dow Jones mostly, and oil. And what I think is the huge bait on the currency markets is, as you said, it's open 24/5. Most money is exchanged. But of course, that's of no use to the retail trader because we cannot sit there 24/5. And most of the strategies only work during the liquid markets when London, Europe, New York are opened. Of course, there are some scalping strategies for the Asian markets, but not a huge fan of scalping because of the cost of trading. The currency market itself is still shady. It's not as shady as it used to be, but to get information is very hard. It's much harder than in any other market I know. And especially volume doesn't really work because there is no centralized exchange. Using that as help, which I do in stocks, for example, for breakouts, I look at volume, very basic. Cannot even do that in currencies. Usually they don't trend as well either. You have to be a master of that one instrument you're looking at. I know, for example, that the GBP USD is very prone to technicals. It moves very, very well according to my strategy. The GBP JPY, for example, loves to trend. When it takes off, it just takes off and never stops. You can buy the dips. And euro dollar is just a very digital, very analog market because of all the algorithms in it. Many, many moves are fake outs, and I need to go deeper in the time frames. I need to go sometimes even lower than the 1 minute time frame to catch moves and so on. So I think you really need to know the ins and outs of the instruments you are trading and simply add one after the other when you became a master of one instrument.
So give me the perspective on Bitcoin today. Do you trade it?
No.
I would think for all the people that want to get rich in 2 seconds on Bitcoin, and plenty of people are, frankly, a lot of the venture capitalists that have seen this for a long time, obviously they're making a bloody fortune. To me, I really wonder, you mentioned the liquidity of the FX markets. I think at some point in time when the Bitcoin, and look, the Bitcoin story is not going to stop anytime soon, but I could see that market could fall off a cliff and then go back up, and it could be up and down for years to come. But that first big cliff that it falls off, I have a sneaky suspicion that liquidity is going to be the story on the cover of Time magazine.
Oh, yes.
Because it's not, there's no regulation there. There's no, it's going to be the Wild West when everyone decides that Bitcoin has peaked and everyone decides they want their money at the same time. That's going to be a really interesting story to watch.
Yep, and also the exchanges. I mean, Mt. Gox was formerly the biggest Bitcoin exchange based in Tokyo, I think, and it got hacked. And then another Ethereum exchange was hacked, and then 30 million US dollars worth of Ethereum were stolen, and they cannot find them anymore. And it's just so unregulated. It's even worse than Forex. And I mean, the surest indicator is when my friends come to me and they say, "Hey, I have 15k euros. What do you think? Should I buy some Bitcoins?"
I feel like you right now. Like I'm starting to get that kind of. I mean, I know the people that have been in it for a long time, as I mentioned, the venture capitalists and whatnot, and so they're smiling all the way to the bank. But I think when you start to hear the new people in the summer of 2017, that's when it starts to. It reminds me of a time before you would recall, but it reminds me a lot of the same feeling I had during the dot-com bubble when people that don't seem to be that clued in are really getting excited about Bitcoin.
Many people from that time, they still sell their track records and say, "I'm the greatest trader of all times," but they never made money after that.
Let me ask you something though also about personality and perhaps generation. You said at the top of this call, you're glued to the screen 6 to 8 hours with the TV in the background. From a concentration standpoint, a time standpoint, there's the time commitment there that's different than perhaps a longer term strategy. I would guess that you have also experienced, since you have been teaching, I would guess you've also experienced people that want to do what you're doing, but then they get in the middle of it and personality-wise, they're not cut out for it. So just hold that thought for a second. I want you to elaborate on that. But then also, too, perhaps generationally, that perhaps your generation is going to have less, I don't want to use the word problem, but is going to not be as uncomfortable with the idea of being glued to a screen for 6 to 8 hours a day because you guys have been glued to a screen your whole life.
That's an interesting thought there. I think 90% of people which I'm mentoring are not going to stay in day trading or in trading at all. But if they stick to trading, they are not going to stick to day trading. That's what I experienced over the years, simply because most people feel miserable when they do that.
But you love it. I can kind of hear it in your voice. You're very kind of low key, but it sounds like you really love it.
I definitely do. I mean, when I was 6 years old, I started playing video games. Like, that's all I did for the next 20 years, basically.
So again, I made a good guess, right? So you have been glued to a screen.
Yeah, I mean, when I finish up my trading session for relaxation, I play video games. It's like the screen is my home, and that's just what I do. And for me, that's not a big deal. But other people, they will definitely feel miserable. And even some people from my generation, which are into video games, they are not going to go into day trading because video games are so instant gratification. They are so nicely designed psychologically that you feel this reward all the time. But trading, you need a lot of patience, and video games are not designed that way. So frustration comes up very, very quickly. I think most people would psychologically do better on the higher time frames.
What was the first video game that you were dominating in that you were playing 20 hours a day?
Counter-Strike.
Counter-Strike?
Yeah, there was an ego shooter, came out in 1997, I think. The first beta. I was one of the first people back then who played it online. And back then we had dial-up modems, so no one else could use the phone when I was playing. My parents were going crazy. And I was just playing it 10 hours a day. Then I got into a team and we had a sponsor and flew to international tournaments, and it was a good time. It was fun. Yeah. So that's basically what I'm doing for a living now. Just I look at charts and I don't shoot people virtually.
I think you're right. You have, as I kind of have probed around here, you have found a way to take the video game love and just keep it going. I think I'm lucky in the sense that I guess it would have been 20 years before you where I would have seen my first video game. I'm lucky that I didn't get hooked because there was no way in the mid to late 70s to get hooked on fucking Pong, Yeah. I mean, so there was, or Breakout. There was no way to get as addictively hooked as you guys got hooked 20 years later. I feel lucky in the sense that, lucky, who knows? They just would have gone down a different direction. But I just didn't get hooked as much. I remember I was just a little past before they really started taking the psychological addiction into design, huh?
Absolutely. And I mean, Counter-Strike itself is like a chess game. That's what really fascinated me about the game, was because the games I played before that, they were okay, but there was no real depth to it. There was only skill, like you needed to train your lizard brain. When that enemy comes around the corner, you have to shoot as quickly as possible. But Counter-Strike was like a chess game. You had 5 players versus 5 players, different strategies, different weapon behavior, and so on. So that's what really appealed to me in that game. That not only individual skill, but also strategic skill could define a match. And that's what ultimately then took me to poker and to trading.
Did you have a favorite poker player, a favorite pro poker player that you liked, or was that kind of like ridiculous to even have such a thing?
Phil Ivey, for sure. He's just such a beast. I mean, when you see him at the table and the look in his eyes is like he's out there somewhere, but he's just so focused. It's amazing. And he usually doesn't talk at the table. He's just watching every move the other players do, and it's just so amazing to watch him. And he's a great player too.
I had a chance years ago when I did this documentary film, and I have to some of the names I have to recall, but I had a chance to talk to a lot of the big names at the time. 2 of those guys got in trouble. That would have been Lederer and Jesus. They kind of, I don't know if they got their names cleaned up or not, but they were interesting, really smart guys, super smart guys. And the magician guy, another guy that came in second, a guy that I think he disappeared. He actually told me he trained. He had never been in one of the World Series tournaments. His name was Wasika. Had never been in one of the World Series tournaments, and he came in second and won $6 million. I don't think he ever got back to that height again.
No, I don't even know his name, but I know the others. Yeah. The magician is an amazing player too.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, he was amazing. Was his skills, his magician skills in person were freaking awesome. That was so cool to watch. He stole at the time. I had this director for the film, and he lifted the guy's watch off his wrist and put it on his own wrist, and the guy had no clue. I mean, that's how many years do you have to practice to pull that off, right?
Classic.
Let me shift you into a couple other topics, in the last half of this, I'm going to kind of take you into somewhere you were at with your business right now. But let's talk about travel for a moment, because you are in Saigon, and so you not only have you been able to take your video game addiction and make money with it and show other people how to make money with it. Not only have you figured that out, but you've now added the travel part to it, which especially there's not too many people that I know that come on into Saigon. I think a lot of Americans in particular still think there's a war going on. You could attest that there's no war going on in Saigon, right?
Except for on the streets, the traffic.
But talk to me about the travel. So how many years now have you been traveling while you trade and run your business?
Started in 2010, so almost 8 years now.
You've been traveling the whole time?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, sometimes when I really like the place, then I established a home base there for 3-6 months or so, and I stayed a bit longer.
Your partner's in Thailand?
He was in Thailand until recently. He just moved back to Germany with his girlfriend. Yeah, he had enough. I think 5 years. He did it for 5 years. Yeah, and now he wants to go back to good old home country. I've been doing it for quite some time now, yeah. Most of the traveling was done in Asia, simply because I love it here. The food is amazing. Most of the time, the people are really nice. There's always something to see on the streets. Problem sometimes is the internet connection. That's definitely given me some trouble over time. But I've switched to Airbnbs now from hotels, and most of the time, the internet connection is just fine in the Airbnb, so I just ask before I go there.
I've actually got some new connection recently, and my download speed for movies, 4 or 5 gig movies are coming in less than 5 minutes.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Quick, I got to give one shout out before I move into the kind of business part of your life. The reason we are talking today is because I reached out to Steve Burns, and I said to Steve, Steve, who should I be talking with? Give me some traders, give me some people in the trading business community that you know of that I might not know of that I should have on the podcast. So I have to give the shout out to Steve, and you'll have to find him in the States at some point in time, because I've tried to get him to come to Asia, and he doesn't sound like he wants any part of that at all.
He was actually the first person to really help us on Twitter when we started Tradeciety. So big thanks to Steve, great trader, great person. I know he's a huge fan of Jack Daniels, so I'll have a bottle with him if I make it over there.
Make sure I've got the pronunciation of the first business you started. If I got it, I don't even want to say it because I'm looking at it and I have no idea what it means or why it's spelled that way.
Which one, Tradeciety or Edgewonk?
Tradeciety. Is it okay? So it's trading society all connected together.
Yeah, exactly.
So I assume that was your first venture you launched, Tradeciety.
It was actually Edgewonk.
Oh, it was the other way around.
Yeah, because I met my business partner Rolf. He was doing the same like me, traveling and trading, and he was from Germany too. And I was trying to connect to other traders because trading is can be such a hard-nosed business. He said actually, so it launched together. He said that he wanted to launch a community, Tradeciety, and for this launch, he wanted to have a goodie, which is a trading journal, because every trader needs a trading journal. No one knows how to make one and what to track and so on. And he asked me whether we could join up our journals because I had some ideas and he had some ideas, both in Excel. And I said, yeah, sure. So we sat down and made one gigantic Excel file, and it took us like 100 hours, I think. And after we finished, then we looked at it and we said, this is way too good to give out for free. We started Edgewonk, and Tradeciety had to go with another launch present.
Okay, speak to me about your trading journal so people have a feeling. I mean, they might go check you out after this conversation, but give people some details, some meat on the bone, so they understand your idea of a trading journal, your idea of the plan, what you were laying out on that Excel spreadsheet exactly that got you so excited to launch a business off it.
Because every book you read, and every trader out there says you need a trading journal. But then I was looking on the internet and I didn't find anything great or anything which was useful from my perspective. What we actually did was to make it as simple while keeping it as complex as possible. Because when you go into trading, there are so many metrics, and which one should you track? I mean, Sharpe ratio or Sortino or win rate, risk-reward ratio, risk setups. I mean, you can basically track which pants am I wearing today? My lucky pants or...
There's a lot of bullshit out there.
Oh, yes. And there are so many variables. We try to keep it to the simple firstly, so you can enter your setup and the market you are trading. And you can basically check your trade management, whether your trade management is making or losing you money, because I think that's very important for newer traders. Can test alternative strategies, because strategy hopping is a huge problem for many traders. And then with our alternative strategies function, for example, you can test how alternative take profit or stop loss strategies would have worked. You can work out the optimal risk for your portfolio. Where would I get the highest drawdown or the most minimal drawdown versus the highest return, and so on. So everything we did in that journal was basically designed to, you look at it and you know where you're bleeding money and where you can improve.
Do you view yourself as competitors to the TradeStation, Metastock, and Wealth Labs of the world?
Not really. I mean, we would like to work with them, or we are working with some of them in regards that we offer deeper statistics than they do. I know some of them, they offer statistics that go beyond you lost $200 on that trade, for example, Sierra chart. But what we do is that we offer more customization as well to our customers. So I think it is a reason for a trading software to support us, because if they support us, then more users will come to them because they know they can use Edgewonk with the trading software.
So they're complementary, not competitive.
Exactly.
Gotcha. I have to tell you a funny story. I think this was 1999 or so. I was probably about your same age, and I was in the middle of all this trend following stuff, had an educational site up at the time. And I said to myself, gosh, I really there needs to be some software to do what I'm doing. And so there was a company called Logical Information Machines that was, they're Big Sun Spark stations and all this kind of stuff. And they did a lot of testing. They were a very expensive outfit. Anyways, me and my couple partners, we put together a separate company, And I can't believe I did this. We bought a $40,000 Sun Spark Station. It was the size of a small refrigerator. Okay. And then we had one of their programmers helping us decode everything. And basically we ended up, what the idea was we were going to use this logical information machine's back end for all of our data. And then we were coding the front end, browser based, and people would go in and enter whatever it is, their risk, their account size, all the markets they wanted to trade, et cetera, and basically have an online version of TradeStation. I can appreciate where you guys are going. It's tough to not just be a local piece of software and to do it browser-based is a whole set of challenges. And you are all browser-based, right?
Oh, we are actually local, but we have cloud-based. What we thought was that we give people the ability to keep their data on their laptop, because some people, they don't want their stuff to fly around in the web, no matter how encrypted it is, but they could also put it on our cloud and then share it with other people.
Try and paint a picture, though, for people that are out there and they want to kind of better understand where you've gone. Because a lot of people have a decent perspective on TradeStation or Metastock, but try and get them over the hump to understand more about Edgewonk and where you guys have gone with it and the potential benefit for them.
I think the real benefit of Edgewonk lies beyond what can be seen from the statements you get from Metastock or TradeStation. So that is really when you have to do some manual footwork. You really have to go the extra mile, because you can, for example, define certain market conditions, or you can track where the price, what it was doing at the time, or what the VIX was doing at the time, and so on. You can go really, really specialized into your setup, so you can basically track tons of data. And then later on, you go into your database, you look at our pivot table, you can split it up, setup for setup. And then you can see that Monday morning, when that news release comes out, I make a boatload of money usually. And when Friday evening or Friday afternoon, I don't make so much money, or if I didn't, you can also track metagame, for example. I didn't sleep well last night. You can track that. Or I exercised before I sat down. That's what I do. Like, I track whether I exercise before I start trading, and that has a huge implication on my performance, actually. And all of that is really to simply show the trader that he has to see it black and white, okay? Because trading is like, there are no direct relations between cause and effect, not which we can observe, because it's based on probability, so you need to see it black and white. And then when you do that in Edgewonk, you really track, every time I'm doing this happens with a probability of this and this percentage. That's when you really change your game.
It's funny you mention sleep, and I think you would probably also talk about diet. You just mentioned exercise. All of these factors, it doesn't make a difference what your endeavor is in life. So many people think they can just go through life and kind of wing it, stay out to 4 a.m. every night, and not have a disciplined daily system, a daily personal system for their physical being, and then somehow or another still be successful. It doesn't work that way.
No way, no. Sleep hygiene is so important, for sure.
You call it sleep hygiene?
Yes. I go to bed the same time every night, try to get up the same time every day. And that's what really makes a huge difference. And then, of course, people need to know how much sleep they need. Some people, I can deal with 6 hours. I know people with 6 hours per night, they would probably crash and burn, and they need 7 or 8 hours. That's totally fine. Just sleep is really one of the things you can improve on your health and your psychology a lot if you do it right.
It's amazing when you have your right amount of sleep, whatever that right amount is for you. For me, it's probably between 7 and 8. But when you have your right amount, there's a mental clarity, a mental acuity that just, it's like, I don't know. It's almost like feeling like you're drunk. Of course, you're not drunk. You're just kind of, your brain is just, there's an on fire aspect when you've got the right amount of sleep. And when you don't, you're just a bundle of nothing.
Absolutely. Performance just goes down the drain if you don't sleep enough.
Yeah, I love one thing too that I've seen you mention in your world the news avoidance. Do you literally, I mean, you mentioned the economic reports. Okay, that's something very finite, a fundamental piece of information that you use for your overall technical strategy. Okay, I get it. But you don't find yourself getting involved in or paying attention to just all of the other stuff.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, I used to do that because that's what everyone used to do. Is like, people say you have to know what's going on in the world. But if you read the news, you don't know anything, because what the news gives you is just like a small piece of what they deem newsworthy, what's happening in the world, and 90% of that is negative. Like when you watch the news, I think the world is gonna explode any day now. And it just gives me depression. And actually, if I don't follow the news, I feel much better as a person. Like, I can relate to life in totally different ways than I would if I had to think about North Korea all the time. Because if it happens, you can't change it anything, right? So if someone decides to fire a rocket, you're gonna die, and it doesn't matter if you have a bunker or not. You're gonna die now or 5 years later when you crawl out of it. Try to enjoy life and don't listen to the negativity in the media. And I try actually to stay away from social media as well, as far as possible, unless it's for business, or I follow some interesting people. Like you, for example, on Facebook, you post some interesting articles. Awesome.
I go off I'm still growing up in the Washington, D.C. area. I think I always have a little bit of that kind of just condemnation about insane stuff I see. But I appreciate what you're saying, though, because I'm pretty well weaned off it. I'll drift in, but I don't watch things, but I'll get a few minutes here just to kind of stay in touch. But I think you're right, though, about the idea of, worrying about a fat little dude in North Korea that might drop a nuke on us. I mean, what does the worrying do? The worrying doesn't help you. If he drops the nuke, he's going to drop the nuke. If you worry in advance of him dropping the nuke, it doesn't make it any better when he does drop the nuke, because you're going to be dead anyways.
Exactly, that's the point. And I mean, a smart person once said, like, 95% of the worries you have during your life are not going to come true. And then if something happens, then it will be so unexpected that you can't prepare for it anything. Just live life like day by day and make the best out of it, and just don't get too deep into the nitty gritty of what is going on in the world. Because
I think, though, if people really are worried about this short fat guy that's going to drop the nuke on them from North Korea, if they're really worried about this, seriously, I mean, I can imagine some options really quick. Easter Island is somewhere in the middle of the Pacific. Okay, they could go there. They could go to a place like Chile, down in South America. I mean, that's far enough away. I don't think, he's not coming down there with his nukes. So, I mean, if you're really worried, you can, New Zealand's probably a pretty safe place if you really need to bug out and go hide from everything, right?
That's the point. And I mean, that's a crazy thing, because that's exactly what my thinking was maybe a few years ago when I was talking to my friends, and we were talking about the possibility of China and Russia going off against America and so on. And then we were talking about we should just buy a farm on New Zealand and have fun with our sheep. That day I realized that thinking doesn't really help my life, because I'm not going to do it anyway.
Yeah, who the f wants to be with sheep all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So give me where's your favorite city in the world? Give me Hong Kong. Okay. I was actually going to say, give me your top 3.
Okay, then that must be Beijing. So Hong Kong number 1, Beijing, and then probably Berlin in Germany.
Gotcha. I haven't been to Berlin since the mid-1990s. It's been a long time. What do you like about Beijing so much?
The difference of old and new. So they have these hutongs, the small neighborhoods inside of the center of the city. And you can walk in there. And then life in there is basically like 100 years ago or 200 years ago, except for that they have TVs now, but that's it. Most of the people, they still go to the public toilet and so on. And you can see the skyscrapers in the back. And then there's a really great art scene going on. You can get every food you want in the world. They have small bars, whiskey bars, jazz bars. You can go to beautiful parks. And I mean, it would be an even better place if it wasn't for the smog. Because
that's my big negative. Every time I'm there, that's my negative. It's a huge interesting place. And like, it's one of those places when you go for the first time, you're like, I'm not been here before. This is really different.
Exactly.
But I mean, I think I have that you have that same feeling going to Hong Kong, but it's a different kind of different. You know, you got the Brits there still hanging around. Maybe I think I'd like Hong Kong more if they leave. Excuse me to all my British friends. Yeah, but come on, I'm going to give my British friends a lot of shit because I got to tell you, there's a lot of folks in Asia that like hold a lot of grudges and they're still not happy at the Brits.
Oh yes, rightfully.
So, hey, you're German. A lot of people got problems with you.
Oh yeah, that's
I'm
true.
American. Everyone's got a problem with an American these days, right? Everyone's mad at somebody, right? It's crazy.
When you go somewhere, first go on Google, like what did we do there, and how many years ago did we do it, and then you can say, maybe I changed my identity from German to French, and then everyone is okay. Who knows?
Well, you can't. If you come to Vietnam though, and you're French, they're not happy about that.
Oh yes.
Give me your Hong Kong. What do you love about Hong Kong so much? Man, I love the old hilly parts, like in Soho and that kind of stuff. But what do you love about Hong Kong so much?
Firstly, it's the fusion of West and East, because you have these old Chinese quarters and districts and the culture and the temples and so on, and then you have the Western culture as well with the huge skyscrapers, and it's just so interesting to see how everything developed and how they built the buildings into the hills. And you can get basically in 10 minutes, you can take the car or the public transport and you are at the beach, which is beautiful. There are wild cows and wild pigs running around, or you can go to the jungle, you can go hiking, beautiful nature reservoir. I mean, most people don't know it, but 80% or so of Hong Kong is actually a nature reservoir.
80%, really?
Yeah, just look at it on the map. It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, and it's just really, really the quality of life is amazing in Hong Kong. If you have money, if you don't have money, it's can be a horrible place. That's for sure, because the apartments are so small.
Where can we send people? Tradeciety and Edgewonk, I believe, are the two places you're going to want people to go to. And look, we didn't go into a lot of the specifics. People will have to kind of pull the browser up and go check things out and see more about your businesses and how you could help people with their trading.
Yeah, that's absolutely cool, because we have on YouTube, also youtube.com/Tradeciety, we have in-depth videos, and on Edgewonk and Tradeciety we have blogs. So if you really want to know what exactly we are doing, just go to our websites. And you can also find us on Twitter. Simply enter Tradeciety, you will find us.
Tradeciety, as it really doesn't sound. So it's TradeCiety. So it's trade.
Exactly.
Trade, get rid of the society, right?
Exactly. That's it.
Okay. Hey, Moritz, it was good chatting today.
Really great. Yes, had a good time. Thank you.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.